Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, April 20th, 2018, the WNW 331. Folks, I've been in the news business since the 70s, since I was a very young guy. And I do not know of a time in my career, I do not know of a time in American history when criminal referrals from Congress, either party, issued for James Comey, Hillary Clinton, Loretta Lynch, Andrew McCabe, Rob Rosenstein, a recusal demanded. This is widely reported. This is FBI. This also includes FBI lovebirds Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. This is a Zero Hedge article. A laundry list of potential crimes: obstruction of justice, perjury, corruption. That's just a few. Hillary Clinton's special note here, and this is something I've been harping on about her global charity fraud contributions and donations. I should put that in quote, but this is their article, not mine. And donations by foreign nationals. Donations by foreign nationals. You mean like the $145 million given to the Clinton global charity fraud, the Clinton Foundation, and not long after that, Russia got 20% of our uranium business? Folks, this is unparalleled in United States history. A former James Comey, who Congress says in this Inspector General's report, these aren't investigations. These are what they say are known felonies that have happened with these people and many others. James Comey, perjury, lied in Congress, obstruction of justice, exonerated Hillary Clinton months before it happened. He said, oh, yeah, we wrote exoneration letters for a lot of people before we did an investigation. People at the FBI must be cringing. I mean, the good people, and then there are good people left at the FBI. But there's a lot of bad ones. I mean, ex-head of the FBI, his lieutenant, Andrew McCabe, who incidentally was quoted as saying if he goes down, he's going to take everybody with him. Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director. Loretta Lynch, the former attorney general. These are all people that that Congress, 11 congressmen, have referred to Jeff Sessions for a criminal referral and listed out the crimes that they know of so far. Stunning. I mean, stunning. Joe DeGenova, the former favorite, this is just for the big principal people, the assistant FBI director, Andrew McCabe, Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State and presidential candidate, leader of the party, also the leader of the DNC. She bought it for $20 million. The Obama Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, who met Bill Clinton on the tarmac and just talked about grandbabies, right? And then James Comey on this ridiculous book tour. His attorneys got to be just absolutely barfing on themselves with him on this book tour and him being referred for criminal indictments for corruption and perjury, obstruction of justice, multiple other crimes, according to Congress. I don't know of a time when this has ever happened, in any time in American history, where this many people of a former administration are referred for criminal indictments. And I'm also talking about the Strzok and Page, the lovebirds. I got to tell you that Joe DeGenova, the former famed special prosecutor, or not special prosecutor, I'm sorry, federal prosecutor, and he busted people for drug trafficking and corruption and all kinds of stuff in Washington. Joe DeGenova, you can look it up, spells his name with a small D-I, big G. Anyway, he says, listen, this is a Democrat conspiracy to provide false information. One of the things was the phony FISA warrants with the Hillary Clinton bought and paid for dossier, but to provide false information to try to remove an incoming duly elected president, and that'd be President Trump. That it's a conspiracy by Democrats, and I think holdover in Trump-hating Republicans, Rhino Republicans. He says you just can't ignore this anymore, any longer. I mean, and let me just point out, too, the evidence mounts, it's just one guy. Here's Edward Klein. He's never had to walk any of this back in any of his books. All Out War, The Plot to Destroy Trump. I had him on USAWatchdog.com, which got demonetized by Google. Anyway, he said that on December 16, 2016, this is best-selling author Edward KLEIN, said that Trump held a dinner, and they came up with a plan to unmask hundreds of people to basically help create the idea that Donald Trump was colluding with the Russians, and to embarrass him and to kick him and push him out of office. Now, Joe DeGenova said it was the Democrats, but I think it's, and I've said this before, we've never had a outgoing administration work this hard at trying to destroy an incoming president and try to remove him from office. I mean, the Democrats, one of their platforms is to impeach Donald Trump, which I do not think is going to happen. They also want to have reparations if they get back in control of Congress, and all kinds of crazyville. Raise your taxes, take away your guns and your rights. It's just crazy. But Joe DeGenova is pointing out the fact that this was a conspiracy, a large conspiracy. This is treason. This is treason against the Constitution. You're supposed to go quietly when your guy in your administration gets voted out of office. Not these guys. And I'm back to the question, why? Why would so many people, including, people like James Clapper and other people in the intelligence community, Brennan, why would these people commit so many felonies and be so desperate to remove Donald Trump from office? I mean, they're so desperate that now they're attacking his personal attorney, Cohen. They're desperate. Why would they do that? I think it revolves around a fraud and treason and wanting to take down America from the inside, payoffs, bribery, multiple felonies. What's a few more to take out President Donald Trump? Because he's going to come after him. I think we had a grand conspiracy, unconstitutional, treasonous, fraudulent, criminal conspiracy to take out Donald Trump because they didn't want their crimes uncovered. That's exactly what's coming down. This has never happened, folks. This is just the top people, many others. A former assistant FBI director, a FBI director, a attorney general, a possible leader of the party, presidential candidate, and former secretary of state referred for criminal charges along with other people. That's never happened before, folks. That's never happened. This, as I've said many times, this makes Watergate look like a squirt gun fight. There was no money that changed hands with Watergate and Nixon. There was never a national security issue with Nixon. Never. You give away 20% of America's uranium to the Russians, and you take bribes for it, and then you cover it up. And Robert Mueller was also involved in that little fiasco, along with Rob Rosenstein. You didn't stop it. You allowed the deal to go through, and they, well, CFIUS all voted on it. Well, I guess if Robert Mueller would have done his job, and Rob Rosenstein, who was also working on the case in the Justice Department in the Maryland District at the time, I would suspect that nobody would vote on it if they had a 6-year undercover informant was revealed, which Mueller did have, a 6-year undercover informant that had 5,000 pages and documents, video and eyewitness testimony of extortion, bribery, racketeering, money laundering, you name it. And a name for the operation, Operation Dominance, to get dominance of the uranium industry, in which the United States, we'd lose 20% of ours. And that's exactly what happened. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. What about the no-signature Iran deal? There's $150 billion up for grabs. Did they get their 150, or did they get 100? Did everybody in the world that was in on that scam, collect $50 billion and then, dole it out to their buddy? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. Mike Pompeo is going to likely be confirmed as the new Secretary of State. He was the guy that uncovered that little fraud, that there was no signatures by Iran. The no signature, no deal, the fraud of a no deal. It's a fraud. Give somebody $150 billion, you're not going to have them sign anything? It's fraud. Come on. And that's just what we know about. What about a Fast and Furious giving guns to the Mexican drug cartel? What could go wrong? Brian Terry was murdered by those guns. border agent, Terry. And meanwhile, so this comes out day before yesterday, and then yesterday, USA Today. Anybody writing anything about the all the people that are referred to for a criminal indictment to Jeff Sessions? Which I don't. This is all stuff that is that they say they have the goods on. Anything in the fish wrap here, the nation's news, the nation's propaganda. That's too stupid to be stupid, folks. That's just too stupid to be stupid. My local paper here, they have room for this. Trump changes story and Comey firing and this stupid Colbert. That's how his sister pronounces her name, Colbert, not Colbert. Colbert. You know, this stupid story. He's on this crazy, moronic book tour. And then, the next day or 2 days later, he's referred on criminal charges for perjury. And any of the big papers talking about that? Oh, yes, and a couple of days earlier, here we have, Comey on Trump. He's morally unfit. Oh, really? How about somebody that commits perjury and obstruction, according to Congress? Is that morally unfit? I mean, too stupid to be stupid, folks. And this is what I'm talking about with the journalism. There isn't any. There's thought shaping and propaganda, and they're losing tons of money, and they obviously don't care how much money they lose. I mean, they make these wild accusations about Sean Hannity, which he must be over the target because they want him. You know, that, Michael Cohen, the Trump attorney, was also the attorney for Hannity. Hannity says he never paid him. And, I think Washington Post did a big hit piece on it. They never called him. Folks, I never got a comment from him. I never did a story where I went after somebody or some company ever at 5 TV stations and 2 networks. Did I ever say something negative about somebody and not get their side of the story? Fax me a statement. I'll do an interview. Whatever you like. I want to hear what you have to say as well. Have your attorney call me. Whatever. Nothing. Crickets. Just go ahead and put the story on. That's not journalism. That's not journalism. That's propaganda. You don't even hear from the target of your story that you're trashing and making all kinds of wild claims about, which he says are totally untrue. Hannity, about him being the client of Trump's lawyer. He wasn't. He says, I knew him. You know, a lot of people in those circles in New York. I mean, Hannity is a guy who's on 500 radio stations, and he has his own show at night, and he's had this guy on as a guest multiple times. You know, he says he asked him a question about real estate, something like that. But that's not my point. My point is this. These big newspapers go out and they do, and TV and radio and CNN. And, CNN, they just trash Sean Hannity. They don't invite him on. I would never be able to do that. When I was there at CNN, I could never do that. Can I just trash this guy? I'm not going to call him or invite him on or try to get a comment or try to read a statement. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to trash him. Is that okay? My boss would look at me like I'm crazy. The lawyers would, standards, legal, no, you can't do that. Journalists, there are 3 towers: standards and practices, legal, and also the journalism with the Big J review down from Atlanta. A guy, a vice president in Atlanta would look at every one of my scripts. There's no way I could do that. It's okay if I trash this person without even talking to him, making a phone call. Now, listen, if you called and said, I don't have any comment, okay, then you put that in your story. But Hannity would probably come on CNN as a guest. They don't want that. They'd probably burn him to the ground. That would be all over YouTube and all over everywhere, him being a guest to explain himself on CNN. That's not journalism, folks. I'm just pointing this out. We don't have journalism. And when you miss a story as big as these people, along with others that are probably on their way, being criminally referred, I don't care which party it is. I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican. You miss something that big, you don't bother covering something that big, is, as Jim Sinclair says, too stupid to be stupid. It's really unbelievable. And we have big problems coming down the pipe, and so does the president. I've told you that he walked into office with nearly $20 trillion in debt. I mean, he did not have, I got to hand it to Donald Trump. If Hillary would have been elected, we'd be in a full-blown depression, and many people like me would probably be headed to a FEMA camp. I don't know. She said there are limits on the Second Amendment and limits on the First Amendment. I've said this many times. She said that to Chris Wallace in the only major interview she did. Limits on the Second Amendment and limits on the First Amendment, your freedom of speech and freedom of religion, limits. And so, but we have huge problems, huge problems. One of them, Greg Manarino was telling me today, and he said this before on USAWatchdog.com. Greg Manarino, professional trader at traderschoice.net, gives everything away for free on his site. And he says, listen, man, the yield curve is flattening. He says that is signaling big trouble. It means we're heading into a recession and a market fall off and whatever, and it's going to invert. And let me just show you, let me start here. I'm going to start here. Okay, so this is a normal yield curve, all right? And so if you look over here, we got interest rates at 4.5%, and the longer the curve is, the farther out you go, the higher the interest rate. A short-term interest rate for 60-day money, in the old days you might get 2%, and if you tied it up for 3 years, you might have got 4% or 5%. This isn't all that long ago. The longer you hold it, the higher the interest rate. Well, that's not happening. Here's that's the old curve. That's how it's supposed to look. This is the normal yield curve. Here's what's happening now. Totally flat. Oops. What? So this is what it's supposed to look like, and this is what it looks like now. What does that mean? A flattening of the yield curve. In other words, all the money along the yield spectrum from 2 to 5 to 10 to 30 is about the same. As a matter of fact, what's going to happen is that the 30 is going to go below the 10 in terms of interest rate. Because if you tie your money up for 10 years, you got to get a couple of percent, 2 or 3% more for tying it up for another 20 years and a 30-year note, right? This is scaring the heck out of me because I've been watching this thing for over a year. It was 60 basis points, 0.6% between the 10-year and the 30-year. And then it became in the 50s, and then it started falling into the 40s, 40 basis points, 0.4%. And then it went into the 30s and stayed there for a while. And then the 20s, and now look at this, folks. This is another thing Manarino pointed out to me. He said that look at the 10-year. It's 2.91% for 10-year money. Now, for 3.1%, okay, so we're talking 10 basis points, 0.1% difference, 0.1% to tie your money up for 30 years more. Manarino says, it's going to invert. And it can invert tomorrow. It can invert next week. And when it does, look out, because it is signaling trouble in the economy. Only 10 basis points difference with the 10-year and the 30-year yields. I mean, you walk into a banker's office and said, well, Mr. Hunter, you can get 2.9%, but for, if you just for another 20 years, we'll give you an extra 0.1%. Sound like a deal to you? That's the problem, folks. That is a massive, huge problem. And Manarino says, listen, you got to watch the bond market. He's been saying that for a long time. Watch the bond market. This thing could invert tomorrow. When it does, it's going to be trouble not long after that. He says he also has been telling me this. This is why this freaks me out. He's been telling me, I talk to him all the time. He's a personal friend of mine. And he's telling me, man, you should watch this overnight on Wednesday night and Thursday night. Man, they're buying bonds Tuesday night. They're buying bonds like crazy to try to stabilize this on Thursday. He said they were buying bonds and they still lost it. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I thought, wow, they were buying bonds and the rates shot up from like 2.79 or 2.8 to 2.91. That's a big move in a short amount of time in treasuries. And again, a 0.1%, 10 basis points, actually a little less, depending. It moves around a lot in the scale, but this is signaling trouble. This is what Gregory Manarino says. He says, I don't know how long they can hold it together. At some point it's going to break, and they could lose control of interest rates. I have Catherine Austin Fitz is going to be the guest for the early Sunday release. And listen, she's always thought the dollar would be pretty good. It's a military question. And that the Treasury market, no problem with that. In this interview, for the first time, and she said, I got to tell you, Greg, for the first time, I'm worried about the dollar and I'm worried about Treasury bonds. This is Catherine Austin Fitts, folks. This is the person that correctly predicted we'd have a slow burn. And she was right. Now she's saying, well, we're going to go from slow burn to bam at some point. It's if you don't listen to another interview for the rest of the year, listen to this. It is she's always good. She's one of the favorites on USAWatchdog.com. She was fantastic in this interview. It's only 30 minutes long. I'm sure there'll be some people wanting to listen to it again. The other thing I wanted to bring up was Bo Pony. Bo Pony is a friend of mine. I like Bo Pony. I know what you're thinking. Oh, you're so wrong in his predictions. You know what? Bo Pony would be the first person to tell you that some of his predictions were wrong. Some of them were right, and they're still right today. You've had a bunch of people say that gold would go below $1,000 an ounce, and Bo Pony correctly picked the bottom of the market back in 2015, the gold market, at least the near-term bottom, at $1,045, and he said it would never go below that. He has been correct about that. And I talked to Bo today and said, a lot of people thought, they said you were wrong. He said, yes, I was wrong. I was wrong in some things, but right in others. But yes, I was wrong about my timing. He's also been into Bitcoin and actually done quite well predicting Bitcoin as well. But he says, listen, gold is going to go up. There is no, and I've long said, listen, I think in these little small changes and the market is manipulated dramatically. People are pled guilty to manipulating the gold and silver market. It's statement of fact manipulated gold and silver, all the markets, Forex, LIBOR, futures, commodity, they're all manipulated, particularly gold and silver. And he says, listen, man, come at the beginning of May, you're going to see gold prices rocket up. And then he also says, listen, and you don't even have to buy gold. And some people don't have the money to go out and buy gold because it's $1,300 and change an ounce. And he says, you don't have to tell people to buy gold. He doesn't sell gold and silver. Either do I. So I don't care where you get it. Although I have somebody really good on my site that's just an advertiser, discount gold and silver trading. But she doesn't pay me per transaction. Doesn't even tell me what happens. So she just pays me per month for advertising. But she's honest, and I don't get complaints. That's why she's still on here. I digress. But I want to tell you, so Bo Pony says, just tell people to buy silver. Silver is at 80 to 1. 80 ounces of silver equals 1 ounce of gold. It should be more like 10 to 15 ounces is really the traditional normal amount. For the longest time it was 30 to 1, but it's 80 to 1. 80 ounces of silver equal 1 ounce of gold. He says it's wackadoodle completely out of whack, off balance, which means that the silver is going to go up exponentially faster and higher than gold. He's come up with the same number, and these guys don't talk, they don't know each other. Bo Pony and Cliff High. They come up with $600 an ounce for silver. I know this sounds crazy. But Pony says that, yes, tell your people. I'll be the first to say, yes, my timing was wrong. But, the thing's manipulated. But not all of his timing was wrong. And I have long said, and I'll say this again, that he's going to be right. He's going to be correct. So he says, listen, tell your peeps, that it's going to go up, particularly silver and gold, starting in early May. And he says, one more thing. He says his chart work says the bond market's going to fall on its head sometime in June. And how do you even tell him about this? This is a completely separate conversation I had with Greg Manarino. And I've been watching this 10-year. If they're buying bonds and it's still going up, whoa. So you're trying to suppress it and you still got rising yields? Ooh, uh-oh. Can you imagine all the derivatives, the interest rate derivatives that could go haywire if interest rates go up too fast? I mean, U.S. banks have tens of trillions of dollars, just U.S. banks, in interest rate derivatives. Remember the IMF coming up with Deutsche Bank being the systemically most dangerous bank in the world. And then a year or two later, they added 8 more banks. So we have 9 systemically dangerous banks, huge institutions. You couldn't stop that kind of a black swan if it gets going with the amount of derivatives. Andrew Maguire, he's another guy that's been talking about the extreme leverage in gold. He was on this site. I mean, stunned me when he said, when you count all the derivatives, I mean, it's 500 to 1, physically, 500 claims for every 1 ounce of gold at COMEX and LBMA. And he says, if you count the derivatives, it's probably 1,000 to 1. 1,000 to 1. 1,000 claims for every ounce of gold. And then you add Bill Holter saying, they got 1 billion ounces of silver that people want delivered right now. And at this rate, we're going to be 3 billion ounces by the end of the year. And they don't have it, and they're not going to have it. Wow, you don't think Wall Street would front run that trade and not wait to the end of the year, do you? Even Catherine Austin Fitts was telling me that, after the interview that I did on Sunday, she said, I got to tell you, I know some analysts, and including myself, and I think gold's going to run higher, much higher. And don't forget the 21 missing trillion dollars that everybody seems to. That's not a fairy tale. That number was derived by using government reports by a earned PhD at Michigan State University, Dr. Mark Skidmore, and a team of master's degrees students going on to get their PhDs. They came up with 21 trillion missing dollars at the Department of Defense and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD and DOD. That's on top of the 20 trillion we're already in debt. Gold could go up and take a moonshot? Really, you think? Especially if the bond, there's no place to run? Fast enough? I mean, I think a lot of this debt's going to get crushed. I mean, when you have Catherine Austin Fitts, who is a person that travels the world to consult and advise people on money and investing, and her connections are, and she's with her connections, and she's worried about the Treasury market. She's worried about default. And I know a lot of people out there say, well, they can't default. They can just print, money, and they don't have to default. Listen, you pay somebody $1 back that when they loaned it to you had $1 worth of buying power, and you pay them back, and it has 1/10 of a cent of buying power. That's a default. So I'm telling you, I'm going to have Bo Pony back on too, incidentally, when we get a new all-time high, and he says sometime this year and maybe earlier than you think. This is Pony at gold2020.com. The stars are aligning up for some bad things to happen, and you better protect yourself. It's like, Warren Pollock saying, get small, don't take on any more debt. Get a car title. You maybe get food and water, whatever. I don't mean to be like a prepper or a somebody that is telling you that oh my gosh, the sky's falling, but the math is horrible. It's awful. I mean, I look at it like when I lived in Florida, I always had 2-3 weeks of food and water always ready in case of any tornado or any hurricane, and hurricanes can spawn tornadoes. But I used to always have that. Half the year, always had that. Batteries. I had stuff like that in case of an emergency. Listen, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the San Andreas Fault, this New Madrid Fault in Missouri could split open. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. Russia said they were going to hit back on the United States. This is just something else. I just want to talk with you. It's, as Bill Holter brought up, who's an expert in gold and silver, and also Rob Kirby, these guys are on the same page with this kind of stuff. Just stand for delivery. No, don't pay us in cash. We don't want the cash. We want our gold and we want our silver. You're going to send it to the LBMA? Hey, LBMA, we want our gold and we want our silver. You think that could mess things up? Like Kirby said, they don't do that because nobody wants to pull the pin on a grenade. Well, didn't Russia say they were gonna basically they were gonna strike back at America? Didn't they say it would be a specific strike back at America? Maybe they're not talking about a military strike. Maybe they're talking about just simply standing for delivery. And as Rob Kirby says, I said, why hasn't it happened? He said, because nobody wants to pull the pin on the grenade. Well, maybe the Russians want to pull the pin on the grenade. I mean, this, and I hate to say this, long before a lot of other people, I was saying, listen, they're arming, covertly and overtly arming the rebels. They were. That's something that Trey Gowdy didn't bring up with when he had Hillary Clinton on the hot seat. That you were gun running to Syria, and they were, and the United States was arming overtly and covertly arming the rebels. I don't think Trump's doing that now. I think he's got them mostly knocked out. And I think the thing with the missile thing, as Warren Pollock says, kabuki theater. He also said there would be no more sanctions against Russia. But things could go bad in a hurry. I mean, China is in a terrible financial shape. They might want to find a scapegoat, as Warren Pollock was saying. We'll just put tariffs on your soybeans and your wheat, and we'll raise the food cost for our people and make them starve and get them all together and get them to hate America, because we need a war too to get us out of the mismanagement and the fraud and the corruption that they committed. Listen, all these states. Russia, China, the U.S., Europe, Brazil. I mean, all the world is full of corrupt governments and people that don't act in their nation's best interest, and they act in their special interest and whatever. I'm just saying, protect yourselves. Just saying, protect yourself. A couple other things. I'm still getting people every week that say, hey, I found your email in my spam file. I thank everybody for donating. I mean, I rarely miss. Even if you donate $1, thank you. But I thank people that donate $1. I put I put USAW thank you in the line. So if you ever see USAW thank you, it's from me. And I do just a short line to make sure people know that I thank them, and I answer questions, and I do get back with people. And I'm still hearing that people that when I do get back with people that it's in the spam file. So please continue to check your spam file. That's another thing Kathleen Austin Fitz brought up, is that her internet service provider was cutting off her clients and blocking her and blocking her clients. That's the whole net neutrality thing. She'll explain that on early Sunday release, Kathleen Austin Fitz. Okay, I've talked enough. Listen, I really appreciate your support of USAWatchdog.com with your comments. Got a lot of smart people at USAWatchdog.com in the comments section. I also appreciate your donations. That helps us out. Remember, fear not. And I want to just bring in one other thing. Don't be fearful. Don't be paralyzed. Don't be quiet. Don't shut up. Oh, and one thing before I go on with my fear not thing, because it's very important. The fear not thing is important, and this is important too. Listen, don't give up on the president. I mean, I'm hearing these people, well, he's lost my vote. Well, I'm not going to support. He shot these missiles. That was kabuki theater, folks. He's buying time. He has a huge undertaking. He makes $1 a year. There's $21 trillion missing dollars at the Department of Defense and Housing and Urban Development. That's on top of the $20 trillion that we already owe. He has a monumental task. He's got the leaders of his own party, Mitch McConnell and Eddie Munster, Paul Ryan, against him. Obviously, they've been against him. He's got the Democrats against him. He had to clean out the Department of Justice and the DOJ, the IRS. There's a huge conspiracy of a former administration, according to Joe DeGeneva, former federal prosecutor, a huge conspiracy to take out a duly elected president. A huge, we're talking hundreds, thousands of people. Folks, back off. There's a lot going on you don't know that's going on. This is a game that's never been played in the United States. So when I hear these, I'm not going to give President Trump money. He signed the omnibus bill. Stop it. Stop it. That shows me you don't grasp the enormity of the problem and how close we are to losing our republic. Stop it. And just say nothing. Get out of the way. So this is a monumental task by an individual, 70 years old, taking $1 a year. He doesn't need another $100 million. He doesn't need another $1 billion. He doesn't need it. So back off. And listen, he's going to make mistakes. That's going to happen. And I'm not here to be the big cheerleader, but listen, I'm for America, and this is the only hope we have. Hillary sure wouldn't be the hope, and nobody else, no rhino Republican, any of these money-grubbing weasels that want the crime and the sucking of America's wealth to continue. This is it. This is it. I mean, the Democrats are going to run on, we're going to raise your taxes, we're going to take away your rights, we're going to pay reparations. They don't want to tell you that. We're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. We want 16-year-old people to vote who don't even contribute to the GDP. They're going to vote against people like me. I mean, this is what we were facing, folks. Communism, Marxism, people that want America destroyed. You know, people, the Democrats that were trying to undermine a duly elected candidate. I mean, this is unbelievable. And incidentally, one of the other things Joe DeGenova said was that this problem goes all the way to the White House, all the way to this conspiracy to Barack Obama. That's also what Edward Klein says, the best-selling author of this book, The Plot to Destroy Trump. But I'm trying to underline what kind of a monumental task it is to turn around the tenfold the size of the Titanic ship that we are on. It's unparalleled in human history. Back off. Give them a break. It's huge problems America faces. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com with your comments and donations. Remember, fear not. Protect yourself physically. And above all, spiritually. Protect yourself. God the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ, are firmly in control.